Thanks for listening to episode 2 of Xactly's Payday Playbook podcast series, a series on incentive compensation, forecasting, and sales effectiveness best practices, tips, trends, and solutions. I'm Kelly Arellano, content marketing at Xactly, and I'm joined by our resident sales effectiveness expert and incentive compensation management expert, Jason Rothbaum. He's a senior principal within Xactly's strategic services team and has been doing sales effectiveness design for over 20 years. That's including compensation plan, design, quota, territory management, allocation, and job role definitions, all of that. Jason started off with the Alexander Group. He moved on to Deloitte, consulting on their sales force effectiveness and practice. He then worked in-house running sales ops and compensation teams at Charter Communications and Sonic Healthcare. He came to Xactly almost 7 years ago to start that in-house practice. So today's episode is all about comp changes during uncertain times. Jason, you presented on this topic at a conference earlier this year. I know you talked about a bunch of options and some solutions and what you're seeing, some companies doing and how they're navigating these challenging times. So I'd like to pass it over to you.
Well, thanks. I'll just say quickly that you should introduce me in all my calls. That was wonderful. Yeah, I talked about this at a World at Work conference, and I know I was joking with you before, but the crowd was mostly from the human resources field, and this was not an overly popular topic. Just how to change people's compensation plans when there's a lot of market volatility, and we've been going through a period of an especially long period of volatility in the downward direction. Started with COVID, when there was a quick shock to the system, the economy shutting down, but that was followed by one of the quickest rebounds ever, and a real tight labor market, and then that was followed by a gradual malaise that we're still in, where there's shedding of resources and resizing of companies. So this was an important topic that not many companies have been touching upon, or not many comp experts have been touching upon, rather. So that's why I was talking about it. And as I said, it went over about as well as could be expected with a group of HR people.
Yeah, I'm sure. That was probably fun.
Yeah. Nothing was thrown at me, though.
Well, nobody will throw anything at you today. So, let's go ahead and dive into some of the options that you presented.
Sure. The options really are predicated on what type of shock or upheaval is happening. Like during COVID, it was really sudden. It was really quick and very sharp. And that companies reacted very differently compared to what they're doing now, which is a long-term, gradual stagnation or even decline. I guess it really reflects the two options. And I've been through many economic shocks and downturns, going back to the 1990s. And there's a general pattern that you see. Really, the first one that certain companies will follow is called weathering the storm. And the other option is obviously the resizing. And I'm not going to take a position on which one is better. It's completely dependent on a company's financials. But when you go through weathering the storm, you're going to follow one set of compensation plan adjustments. And when you go through the resizing, it's a completely different strategy and a completely different change to the compensation plans.
So, first question that comes to mind is, what companies do which traditionally?
Oh, well, that's going to be cruel and heartless, but the ones that I see doing the resizing, they typically do it Well, let me give you the two different situations. When there's a shock, like during COVID, the ones that do the resizing are the ones that have a very fungible labor market. Um, Take investment banking. You could get rid of a ton of investment bankers and low-level ones, mid-level ones, and hire them back pretty quickly. Another crop of MBAs is always coming out of Wharton, Yale, Harvard. They're just constantly flowing out. So there's a good labor pool for very smart people. It's very easy to hire them back. But then you look at another market like, oh God, med device sales, where you have to hire surgeons who can actually demonstrate the device or the medical device by going into the operating theater, crossing the blue line. I used to make this joke in an up market, we're all capitalists. In a down market, we're all communist. When you weather the storm, there's a shared suffering. There's a um, shared pain. Everyone takes a little hit, but not much. Um, you you look at all of those compensation best practices and you kind of relax them. I don't want to say throw them out the window, um, but there were a lot of my colleagues that did completely throw them out the window and then back over them and leave them for dead. Um, Things like um, if you have a renewal person and they don't get paid until they hit 80% of their quota. Okay. When you weather the storm, you remove that minimum performance level. You remove the kinks that reallocate pay from low performers to high performers, and you just make it everyone gets a flat rate. Completely against best practices, but it's short term. Um, Introduced enhanced earnings opportunities, kickers for longer term deals, strategic product kickers, customer kickers, all of those things. Okay, well, they technically don't go against best practices, but it's another way to get reps money. Uh, if splits are eating into pay, companies will just give full credit to everyone. Okay, so in other words, the company's paying out more per sale. That is definitely against best practice. Um, Companies will often give guarantees. I worked with a lot of companies during COVID that gave guarantees. Um, it's not my favorite, but I will say that guarantees do go away. Um, I did see a lot of companies doing um, shorter measurement periods. So instead of measuring people annually, we'll measure them quarterly. Okay, that's a good way to do it because it allows you to reset your quotas more often. But more importantly, it allows people to get over quota pay acceleration more often. You don't have to wait a full year. Um, an awful option that companies will do is just add measures for stuff. And if you're listening to this podcast, please don't do that. But it is something I saw a lot of companies do. Like if you input your CRM, if you hold meetings, I hate those. You should definitely not do those, but I did see them. It's just pure cost to the company. It's just a way to throw money out to keep your reps, but there's no rate of return because you're not generating sales necessarily by doing that. You're priming the pump. Um, the biggest change that I saw was during COVID, at least, was that companies would shift their incentive pay towards retention measures. Just don't lose business. We're not going to pay for growth anymore as much. We're going to pay more for retention. And gee whiz, that's exactly what I'm seeing now too. So I guess that's not only the the weathering the storm, it's also the resizing. Um, that one I don't like because it takes money away from top hunters and it makes them more likely to leave. So you're basically paying more to people who are farmers rather than hunters. Um, so those are the compensation plan changes that are fairly obvious. There are ones that generate a pretty good ROI, but they tend to not funnel as much money out there, like targeted spiffs, um, contests and whatnot. Um, I caution clients to not just pay more for sales you're already covering in the compensation plan. like new product launches would be a great spiff. But if you could sell 5 of your of the products that you're already getting paid for, we'll give you an extra bit of money. Well, that's kind of dumb because that means what, you weren't going to sell 5 before because I'm not paying you enough. Um, soften club qualifications. Awesome way to not spend a ton more on your compensation plan. Another thing is mentoring, helping marketing, doing things internally to help the company build thoughtware. Those could be good ways to position for future growth. If the company is launching new platforms, paying for conversions. So that's generally what I saw during weathering the storm. The worst thing I saw during weathering the storm was lowering quotas. And that one is, oh God, I guess the only euphemism I can use is the nuclear option. Kelly, you're going to earn $100,000 by selling 1 million. Oh, you can't sell 1 million? All right, you'll earn $100,000 by selling 500,000 now. Well, all I did was just increase the cost of sales for my company. I mean, wow, that is a very dangerous thing to do to the company. And also it sets a bad precedent because, I said during up markets, we're all capitalists, during down markets, we're all communists. Think of it this way. If the sales team is unexpectedly doing well, are you going to raise quotas? No. So now the sales team is doing unexpectedly poorly and you're going to lower them? Well, that's really not an at-risk plan, is it? So you can do quota relief, but my preferred approach is that you do partial quota relief instead of let's say you lower the forecast. All right, don't lower everyone's quota to meet the forecast from where it was. Lower it part way. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep that compensation cost of sale fixed. So Kelly, in our example, you are targeted at 100,000 to sell 1 million. Compensation cost to sale at 10%. Now we are looking at only selling 800,000. Okay, I'll give you partial quota relief from 1 million to 900,000. All right, and now I know that you're going to earn proportionally less because you're only really targeted to sell 800,000, but at 900,000 you're going to earn a bit less. So in essence, I'm keeping that compensation cost of sale at 10%. Okay, I prefer that. And also you seem like Santa Claus when you go out to the reps and do that. But that was the weathering the storm options. Now, the resizing the sales team compensation options. That is okay. First, everyone is going to be they're going to be their heart palpitations. Everyone's going to go through these multiple waves of downsizings. You're going to have all of these people who are going to be retained and all these people who are going to be let go. Okay, the people who are retained now feel like they are the cream of the crop, the highest of the best, the great of the great, the greatest of all time, the GOATs. So what do we do with them? Now, when we went through COVID, I saw some of this, especially with the people who sold remotely. Kelly, you remember we had a bunch of people who had within our company who had virtual territories. This was all over the place with companies that have virtual territories. They reduced the size of the sales team, gave their top reps more territory, and we saw that their pay actually went up. So think of that as a mind bender. During a down market, your pay can actually increase as a rep. Granted, you're getting more quota, but first you have a job, you're getting a little bit more quota, and you're targeted to get more pay. So how does that happen? you reallocated higher potential accounts, right? Because you just lost X% of the sales team, their leads have to go somewhere. Then they're going to you if you're retained. So you're given increased sales expectations, more money for fewer people. And if you think about unions, that's exactly how they negotiate: more money for fewer people. And that's how sales teams ended up. And that's how they're ending up now during this long-term resizing. The reps that are being kept across almost all of my client companies that I've been working with, the reps that are kept have higher pay potential. All right. The retained teams have higher quotas, and the company will have to offer higher incentive levels along with higher over quota earnings opportunities. You know what? As a company, I'm giving a rep more accounts to cover. Okay, they're not going to do that for the same money. And as a company, we just downsized where we need to keep the reps that we've kept. Okay, we have to give them more over quota earnings opportunity. Reps were able to dramatically increase their productivity and pay, even as sales teams' sizes fell during COVID. And we're seeing that now. This morning, I got off a call with a company in London. They got rid of, oh God, it wasn't a huge company. They got rid of about 20% of their sales team a few months ago, and we're redoing the comp plans. And they keep emphasizing we can't lose anyone else because their productivity is increasing so much. Well, yeah, of course it is. That's what always happens. So companies also reduce the amount of sales support, they reduce the amount of marketing. It's not just one role that they reduce. So the company's gotten smaller. So what'll often happen is the job role gets more, they get more responsibilities. But in general, the big change to the compensation plan that happens during a resizing, measures remain the same, the weightings often remain the same, but it's that over quota that shoots up. If you hit your quota, we're going to pay you a lot more. Okay, so that's usually an impact from larger quotas. All right, so that's what we're seeing now. Much simpler than when you weather the storm. When you weather the storm, you have all these bad compensation practices that come into effect, but when you resize, all right, things don't change as much in the comp plan, just a few adjustments on the over quota. One of the other things you might want to consider is when, depending on how you've chosen to go through an unprecedented market change, whether it's weathering the storm or whether it's resizing, when you gear for growth again, that change to gear towards to growing the company, most of that in the compensation plans is reflective of what you did beforehand. So if you weathered the storm, all those horrible compensation practices that you put into the compensation plan, you're going to unwind. And that's your big comp change. And if you were resizing the company, all right, now that you're geared for growth and you're going to hire more people, you might lower the compensation, the quotas, and you might spread it out a bit and give those top performers a little bit less of a workload. All right, you're going to unwind the over quota a bit. You're going to not pay them as much.
No, thanks for finishing that. I mean, a lot of questions come to mind as I'm kind of digesting this. But one of the things that's standing out is, what about companies across industries?
Oh, yeah, good point. I alluded to that a little bit at the beginning when I said the the type of strategy you're going to take depends on the the fungibility of labor that you can pull in. But I will say that similar verticals have similar responses. So high tech was the first, I think, well, one of the first during the slow march that we're currently in, um, they were one of the first to resize, and very few others did that. Manufacturing didn't do it. High tech didn't do it. Med device still hasn't done it, but it tends to follow those waves. Um, and there are all sorts of economic reasons behind that, some of which are obvious. But um, the the industry that I see it a lot going through now is manufacturing. I'm getting a bunch of calls from manufacturing companies right, I guess during the high season right now, and they're resizing as well. So I have to brush up on my manufacturing lingo. But during the summer, it was all the SaaS and software companies. So yeah, it tends to follow in waves depending on the industry.
Thanks for that.
Sure.
And thanks everyone for listening in. I'm Kelly Arellano along with Jason Rothbaum. To hear more sales best practices, tips, trends, and solutions, check out more episodes of the Payday Playbook podcast at www.xactlycorp.com. And most importantly, if you're in need of compensation plan changes and don't know where to start, check out Xactly Incent on our homepage.